Hello, we welcome you to the program. We're studying Job chapter 40, and so if you would, turn your Bibles and let's begin. Job chapter 40. In verses 1 to 2, the Lord begins the second speech. The Lord answers Job. Verse 1, Moreover, the Lord answered Job and said. The first speech of the Lord was introduced. Then the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind and said, Job 38:1. Now the second speech is presented. The Lord answers Job. Shall the one who contends with the Almighty correct him? He who rebukes God, let him answer it. The Lord asked if Job, who contends with the Almighty, will correct him. He challenges Job, who rebukes God, to answer this matter. Job, with all of his complaints, whether he realized it or not, had contended with the Almighty. Given what the Lord had said of his power and wisdom and creation, Job 38 and 39, will he continue to correct God? Verses 3 to 5, Job answers the Lord. Then Job answered the Lord and said. Job responds to the Lord. This is Job's first opportunity to answer God when he called. Earlier, Job had prayed to God where he suggested that God would call or summon him to speak before him, and Job would answer. Job 13 and 22. Job 13:20, only two things do not do to me, then I will not hide myself from you. Withdraw your hand far from me, and let not the dread of you make me afraid. Then call, and I will answer, or let me speak, and you respond to me. And so Job has his opportunity to answer the Lord. However, Job, once he had the opportunity to answer God, found the reality of answering God was much different than he had ever imagined. Be careful what you ask for. Verse 4, Behold, I am vile. What shall I answer you? I lay my hand over my mouth. Job states that he is vile. The term vile has the sense of being of little worth or account. Before the Almighty, he sees himself as so trifling that he can give no answer in reply to God. Therefore, he will silence himself. He said, I lay my hand over my mouth. He would not speak. This term vile can also be rendered as insignificant or unworthy, someone of small account. Verse 5. Once I have spoken, but I will not answer. Yes, twice, but I will proceed no further. Job says that he will not add any more to what he has already said to God. I suppose he thinks he has said enough. And verses 6 to 14, the Lord challenges Job. Then the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind and said. The Lord again speaks to Job out of the whirlwind, out of the storm. As Job's answer was insufficient, Job 30 verses 4 to 5, the Lord again challenged Job, as he had in Job 47 and Job 41 to 34. Job had not yet acknowledged the rashness of his words and repented. Job 42, 1 to 6. Verse 7, the Lord said, Now prepare yourself like a man. I will question you, and you shall answer me. The Lord again commands Job to prepare himself, like he did in Job 38 and 3. The Lord would question Job, and Job would answer the Lord. The text, prepare yourself, is literally gird up your loins. This idiom is one meant to express preparation, that one prepare oneself for some difficult task. And so get ready. Verse 8. Would you indeed annul my judgment? Would you condemn me that you may be justified? Would Job really annul or nullify God's judgment, his justice? It was one thing for Job to affirm his own integrity, but Job, who felt he had suffered unfairly, had put God in the wrong, discrediting the justice of God. By so doing, Job had, in effect, condemned God, so that he himself might be justified or declared just, so as to defend his own integrity. Through our study of the book of Job, we've seen Job's sufferings. We know that Job was a man of integrity. While the three friends thought that Job suffered because he had sinned, Job was blameless. This is what the Lord said. While Job was confident in his innocence, he did not know why he suffered, and so spoke rashly about God's justice, as though God had become his enemy. God would show Job his power, which also showed his wisdom. While Job did not understand, God surely understood. The Lord continues in verse 9. Have you an arm like God, or can you thunder with a voice like his? The arm is a symbol of strength and power. Certainly, Job did not have the mighty strength of God, nor did Job have the authority to command with the words of his voice like God. Ethan wrote in Psalm 89:13, you have a mighty arm, strong is your hand, and high is your right hand. The psalmist said these words in praise of God and his strength. If you do have an arm like God, then try being God for a while. Here's the challenge of the Lord to Job. Verse 10, then adorn yourself with majesty and splendor, and array yourself with glory and beauty. The Lord tells Job that if Job is going to take his place, if you will, rule the world, then let him adorn himself with majesty and splendor, and array himself with glory and beauty. Dress yourself as God. Verse 11, disperse the rage of your wrath. Look on everyone who is proud and humble him. If you will rule as God, then judge the wicked. Release your wrath upon them. Pour out your anger on them. Look on the proud, the wicked, and humble him. Job had complained about justice or injustice. And so here the Lord says that if you are to rule, then go ahead. Release your wrath. Pour out your anger on the proud, the wicked, and humble him as you see best. Verse 12, look on everyone who is proud and bring him low. Tread down the wicked in their place. Look on everyone who is proud, the wicked. Bring him low, humble him. Tread down the wicked. Walk on him, crushing him in his place, right where he stands. Verse 13. Hide them in the dust together. Bind their faces in hidden darkness. The Lord says, bury the wicked. To hide the wicked in the dust and to bind their faces in the hidden darkness is to bury them in the grave. Put the wicked in the grave, the Lord told Job. These words, bind their faces. The term bind may also be translated as clothed, like in Ezekiel 16:10, or bandaged, like in Ezekiel 30:21. To bind their faces may mean to shroud or to cover their faces, to dress them for burial. And so bury them in the dust together. Shroud their faces in the grave. Put them in the grave, the Lord tells Job. Verse 14. Then I will also confess to you that your own right hand can save you. If Job is able to do so, Job 49:13, then the Lord will also confess to Job his greatness, Job's greatness, that he is able to save even himself. However, Job could not do these things. He had no right to question the Lord in his judgment, his justice. If he could do these things, then he would be God himself. He was not. Certainly, Job was humbled. In verses 15 to 24, the Lord introduces a new creature for Job's consideration. He has listed a number of animals, both wild and domestic. And earlier than that, he described other features of creation. But now he describes what is called here as the behemoth. The term for behemoth is found once in the Bible, Job 40:15. It is a form of the word that is used for beasts in other passages, such as Job 12:7, 18:3, and 35:11. The word for beast, which describes animals, again, whether domestic or wild. But this is no mere beast. This is a beast of great power, strength. There are those who say that the behemoth was a mythological creature. However, the behemoth was as real as Job, as God made both the behemoth and man. Job 40:15, Job 40, verse 19. The Lord said how that he made the behemoth as he made man. If the animals of the previous chapter are real animals, then why not the behemoth of Job chapter 40? Remember, poetic language can be used to describe literal animals. As we've studied the book of Job, we've seen poetry. But we've also seen literal animals, as we saw in the previous chapter. The most common suggestion for the identity of the behemoth is the hippopotamus. However, there are details of the description that we will study today that do not fit the hippopotamus, such as moving his tail like a cedar. Of course, the hippopotamus has a relatively short tail in relation to its body. Job 40, verse 17. The hippopotamus, as you read this description, appears inadequate for such a great animal. Perhaps the reason why no animal today fits the description is because the animal of the description is extinct. Some suggest that the behemoth may have even been some species of dinosaur. What was the behemoth? A footnote for the New King James Version, the version that we use in our study, states, a large animal, exact identity unknown. Some versions in their footnotes venture a guess, such as the hippopotamus, as the identity of the behemoth. However, the footnote of this version simply states a large animal, exact identity unknown. And so it leaves out the interpretation and simply involves itself in the translation. While we do not know the exact identity of this animal, whatever it may be, it is indeed a powerful animal, far greater than anything else mentioned so far in Job concerning creation. Job was inadequate to explain the other animals mentioned by God in creation, Job 39. And this creature is greater still. However, the Lord, the Almighty, who speaks to Job, is the Creator, who made everything, including the behemoth. Now that we've introduced the behemoth, let's look now at the description given in the text. Job 40, verse 15. Look now at the behemoth, which I made along with you. He eats grass like an ox. The Lord calls for Job to look at the behemoth. When we use the word behemoth today, sometimes we use it to describe something enormous, something great. Note that the behemoth, God made the behemoth along with man. First, the behemoth was a real animal. God created both beast and man. Second, as the behemoth is so powerful, God is even far greater. He is the Almighty. We know that from the Genesis account how God made both man and beast. For example, Genesis 1:24-25. Then God said, let the earth bring forth the living creature according to its kind, cattle and creeping thing and beast of the earth, each according to its kind. And it was so. And God made the beast of the earth according to its kind, cattle according to its kind, and everything that creeps on the earth according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, let us make man in our image, according to our likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. Here we see God as creator, creating both beast and man. We see the original intentions for man, who was made in the image of God. So let's look now at this description of the behemoth. First, he eats grass like an ox. The term like suggests a figure of speech. The behemoth and the ox may be compared to each other in how they both eat grass. However, the behemoth is not an ox. And so here he describes this powerful animal who eats grass like an ox. And so the behemoth is a plant eater. Verse 16. See now, his strength is in his hips, and his power is in his stomach muscles. The Lord calls for Job to look at the behemoth. He points out the behemoth's strong hips and his powerful stomach muscles. Verse 17. He moves his tail like a cedar. The sinews of his thighs are tightly knit. The first part of the passage says that the behemoth moves his tail like a cedar. In what way could his tail be like a cedar tree? Of course, his tail is not literally a cedar. He's comparing the tail of the behemoth to a cedar tree. Well, the most natural characteristic of the cedar would be the size of the tree. The cedar tree is mentioned numerous times in the Old Testament, such as Ezekiel 31, 3 and 8. Here we see that how the cedar tree is of height, of great height. The hippopotamus with its short tail does not fit the description. Amos 2:9 reads, "Yet it was I who destroyed the Amorite before them, whose height was like the height of the cedars, and he was as strong as the oaks. Yet I destroyed the fruit above and his roots beneath." And so it appears that the cedar here, the quality of the cedar is its height, and so the size. And so the behemoth moves its tail like a cedar. It appears to have had a great tail, a tail of great size. There are others who attempt to describe other characteristics of the tail. You compare it to other versions, whether it moves, as in this translation, or bends, or that it is stiff, or that it sways. What exactly is this characteristic? Well, again, reading this version as it stands, one would think the most notable characteristic of a cedar would be its size. And so he moves his tail like a cedar tree. He also says the sinews of his thighs are tightly knit. And so he describes the strength, the muscles of this creature. Of course, if he's going to move his tail like a cedar, then his thighs must be strong. Verse 18, his bones are like beams of bronze, his ribs like bars of iron. The bones of the behemoth are like beams of bronze, and his ribs are like bars of iron. Again, these are figures of speech. His bones are not literally bronze, nor his ribs literally iron. There are some characteristics of the bronze or the iron that are found in the behemoth. And so his bones are like bronze, or his ribs are like iron, in that these are figures expressing his great strength and support. And so the bones and the ribs of this great animal are so strong as to be able to support its great size. Verse 18, we see again his strength. Verse 19, he is the first of the ways of God. Only he who made him can bring near his sword. The behemoth is said to be the first of the ways of God. Some versions read the works of God. Only the Creator can threaten the behemoth. Again, it was God who made the behemoth, Job 40 and verse 15. This passage describes the great strength of the behemoth in relation to the other works of God. And so he is the first of the works of God, or he ranks first among God's works concerning his great strength. Verse 20, surely the mountains yield food for him, and all the beasts of the field play there. The mountains provide vegetation for his great dietary needs. However, all the beasts, he says, are able to play peaceably there in the field, right along with the behemoth. Verse 21, he lies under the lotus trees in a covert of reeds and marsh. The behemoth lies under these trees, hidden among the reeds in the marsh. The lotus trees cover him with their shade. The willows by the brooks surround him. And so the lotus trees cover the behemoth with their shade. The behemoth, as in verse 21, is lying down. The willows by the brook, the willow trees conceal the behemoth. One might imagine how that he's covert, he's concealed, he's covered by this, all the vegetation, by the marsh, the reeds of the marsh, and the trees, the lotus and the willows. Verse 23, indeed, the river may rage, yet he is not disturbed. He is confident, though the Jordan gushes into his mouth. Even though the river may rage, literally oppress, even though the river is turbulent, even though the river overflows its banks in a flood, the behemoth is not disturbed. He is not alarmed. Other animals may flee, not the behemoth. He is confident, though the Jordan gushes into his mouth. He is secure, even though the water rushes against him. And so he is confident. He is not disturbed by even the raging waters of the river. Here he mentions the Jordan. This may suggest the geographical location of the behemoth. Or it may simply mean a river in general. Verse 24, though he takes it in his eyes, or one pierces his nose with a snare. He is confident, though he takes the river in his eyes. If this passage goes along with the previous verse, we see the river raging, we see the Jordan gushing, we see that though he takes it, he takes the river, takes the Jordan in his eyes, though it's gushing into his mouth, even though it's gushing against him, it's rushing up against him, he remains confident. He remains confident even if one were to try to pierce his nose with a snare. I think the point here is that no one could capture it. No one could capture the behemoth. Perhaps and put a ring in its nose, as is done with other animals. And so here we see in Job 40 the description of this great animal. As mentioned earlier, the exact identity is unknown. There are people who have their guesses. But looking at the description on its own, we see that whatever this creature was, it is a great animal. We see the handiwork of the Lord as creator. With all the other animals of creation, here is the behemoth. And Job had difficulty understanding the other creatures of creation. And now the Lord points out the behemoth. We hope that this has been helpful in better understanding this chapter of the book of Job. Lord willing, we'll continue with the next chapter the next time we have opportunity. Thank you for being here today.